So hello, Thomas.
Hello.
Which is, I don't think I've ever called you Thomas. Maybe when I'm referring to you to other people, but usually it's Toma or
Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
Catman. Anyway, so before I cut you off last time, you were saying it's been around 2 years and you're still living your life in Font, still
Yeah.
under training, and you are.
I was saying that so I'm training to be a better climber. I'm focused on climbing at the moment, but I'm not just searching for competence within climbing. I'm searching for competence overall, in general. So it's not just about like climbing the next hard thing. It's also enjoying the process and questioning the process um, and making sure that the process stays the main focus rather than having an obsession for the results, if that makes sense.
That's always how I viewed what you were doing before. So
Yeah.
as if you're just vocalizing it now with a bit more clarity, or
Yeah.
or has there been more clarity since the last time we were talking? Like, you were still climbing then, but
Yeah, I wasn't so much like so serious as I am now with the climbing. I'm not making the mistakes I was making with parkour, which is to become obsessed by it and to like turn something that I love into something that consumes me. That's what happened pretty much with parkour, and I've learned a lot from it. I don't regret going through all that. But now, from what I've learned is what I'm applying to climbing. And so I'm finding just this right balance between pushing myself and setting myself goals and reaching them and working hard, training hard, and all that stuff. But at the same time, without turning it into an obsession and not focusing on the results and being angry at myself when I don't reach them or when I don't reach them fast enough or things like this. Things that used to affect me with parkour and that I've learned to deal with after a lot of years of, of, of being like that. And now I'm not making those mistakes anymore when I train climbing. So my progress is pretty fast. I feel it's pretty fast. And even when there's some bumps in the road, then I still feel that I'm enjoying it because like progress is not just this straight line that goes like this, it's kind of all the way all over the place, and sometimes you're pushing hard and at the same time your level is still like this, like a plateau, even though you're training and you're learning new things and you're pushing yourself in new ways. There's still like this in the line of results, but that's fine. It's just sometimes it takes time and sometimes your progress is going to go like this all of a sudden and you're not really sure why. And if you accept that it's not just this continuous line going up like this, and that sometimes it's like this, sometimes it's like that, and sometimes it actually feels like it's going down also. Like if you accept that this is how it works and that is how it works, then it makes it a lot easier to deal with emotionally and mentally, and to just kind of go with the flow, not let it affect you too deeply and just like, okay, today I didn't make progress that I was hoping I would make, or today I felt weak or whatever it is. And that's fine. Like next time maybe it'll be better. It doesn't matter too much. What matters is I still had a good time and I still maybe learned something new, and or just I was happy to have that training session, and it's not going to affect me more than that. It's just now, like, we'll see tomorrow how it is, and that's it. In the past it was like a really judgmental approach, like with myself. I was always feeling like I wasn't pushing myself enough and I wasn't I don't know, I was never good enough and all this stuff, you know. And over time, it just builds up and it affects you and it brings you down. And there's like, it doesn't serve you anymore. Pressure is only good when it serves you and when it makes you better and more competent, and you know, when it's pushing you forward. But at sometimes too much pressure just pushes you down, or pulls you down, and that's not good. So you have to find the right balance with it, and it's pretty hard. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, it's a very hard equilibrium to find. And it took me a lot of years to find it with parkour, and now with climbing, I'm there because of all this past experience. So I'm really enjoying the climbing just because I got rid of all these these bad habits or whatever you want to call them, and now it's just the good stuff, you know, and it's really enjoyable. It's really nice.
The change between the bad stuff that happened in parkour and what you're now experiencing with climbing, is it acceptance, or is there something else to it too?
It's a form of acceptance. I mean, some of it is acceptance, and I think some of it is just chilling out a little bit, you know, and accepting that, understanding that if you want more, or you want more results, you want to get better at something, it's not all about pushing forward continuously. There's tension, you build tension, but you also need to have relaxation, you know. It's kind of like breathing. If you want to breathe properly, you have to contract and then you release. That's how it works, you know. And it's the balance between the two that makes it efficient. So if you have just contraction, if you're just pushing forward and more continuously, it doesn't work. At some point you need to relax, you know. And I see it like this now in my mind. It's a balance between that tension and that relaxation that you have to try to find. If you're too tense, so to speak, so if you're too disciplined and too focused on reaching your goals and like obsessive, then it's not good. It's gonna break you down. The pressure is gonna build, and you're not gonna be able to cope with it at some point. It's not gonna work in your favor. But at the same time, if you're too relaxed, if you're too chilled, then you have zero discipline. You're not really working long term or anything like this, you know. You're just kind of flying around like a little butterfly, just going wherever. That's not good either. Like, you're not gonna reach goals. You're not gonna get better at anything, or very slowly, and that's not good either. So you want to find the right balance between the two, and that takes a lot of understanding about yourself, about how you work, and about how things function, like how your mind, your brain functions. And so that breakthrough for me of understanding this relationship between tension and relaxation was a big thing. It was a complete game changer, as opposed to just pushing harder all the time, you know. And I went to the end of that. I hit the wall at the end of that, and I realized like was not the way forward. And it took me years, you know, years of pushing more and more, and the more resistance there was, the more I was trying to push. And sometimes you just break. Like that wall is gonna win every time, you know. So you have to stop at some point and kind of look around and understand. Okay, I was wrong. My approach was wrong, and I have to completely rebuild my thinking. You know, my approach. And it's hard because it's very counterintuitive when you. It's very easy to presume that making progress comes from just constant effort, and that if you kind of relax, if you let go, if you chill out a little bit, it's counterintuitive to think that this is going to help you make progress, you know. Like, we tend to think, if I rest, I'm not being productive, you know. That's kind of like our logic in general. But sometimes you do need that. Sometimes again, that relationship between tension and relaxation. Like you need to push. There's a time to push, and there's a time to chill. And you have to constantly juggle with those two ideas in your mind. But once you find that balance, then it's awesome. Like you're enjoying every second of your training, because you're always training when you want to train, and because you're so enjoying it, then you want to go train again. You want that feeling to keep on going. So it's kind of like a virtuous momentum, going on. You enjoy training, so you go train, and you go train because you enjoy training, and it goes on and on and on like this. So and in the end, that's you're being productive, you're making progress, and like everything's working out perfectly, when you find that right balance. And it took me so much time to figure that out, but yeah, now it's there. So I really enjoy that.
And how did you find this? You said that there's the tension, then there's the chill. How did you get to understanding the importance of the chill? Was it just like, this is the way, or was it, obviously you said before you bumped up against the wall multiple times,
Yeah.
And it destroyed you, and then at what point did it transition into just hitting the wall over and over again, and
Yeah.
into the other part, this like paradigm shift of understanding?
Yeah, well, at some point, like I couldn't push against that wall anymore, and the wall won the fight basically. And I pretty much gave up. Like that was in my mind, I was giving up, like I can't take this anymore. Too much pressure, like I'm not enjoying this anymore. And it's reached a point where it's just crushing me. It's just ruining my life, and ruining, like breaking me down completely, like emotionally, mentally. Like I'm destroyed, like someone punching you so hard that you're on the ground and there's no way you're getting back up. Um, so it wasn't even a decision really. It's just, that's it. I've reached my limit. There's no more force that I can put against that wall. Like that wall has resisted every one of my hits, and like I have nothing left to put against it. The wall has won, so it's not really a decision. It's just, that's how it is, like I tried, I pushed, and now I'm down. Like now I'm broken.
Was this with parkour, or with parkour and climbing, or
Just with parkour.
okay?
Yeah, the climbing thing came more recently, like maybe the last couple of years. I've been like really seriously focusing on the climbing, but yeah, that all happened with parkour. And so like at that moment, I decided, like I told myself, like, okay, I'm giving up. I'm finished with this. And it's like dropping something. Like you're carrying something so heavy, and then suddenly you just like, I'm not dealing with this anymore, and you're just dropping everything, and I don't care anymore. Like I don't care anymore. Maybe I've lost. Maybe I failed, or like that's how I was seeing it. Like I didn't succeed. Like I'm failing. I'm giving up. Basically. So it was a bad experience for me, because I couldn't see that actually it was a breakthrough. I didn't see it yet like that. I was still in that other mindset of like, I've given up, so I'm lost. I'm a loser, and that's it. But that's what I needed. Like I couldn't do anymore. I couldn't cope with it anymore. And for a while, I didn't even want to train at all. Like just the thought of doing some physical effort was just really irritating for me. So I spent a lot of time, like for a while, just being in my room and doing nothing, like just maybe reading some books and being on the computer or whatever, watching movies. And that was great, because for the first time, like I could, like for the first time in a long time, um, I could just go with what I wanted to do. I didn't have this discipline I had to follow anymore. I didn't have this voice constantly telling me, you have to go train, you have to, you didn't train a lot today, you have to do something. Like this constant nagging, you know, that I was doing to myself. And it felt nice. It felt like taking a holiday from myself, you know. It was pretty relaxing, pretty nice. And I just enjoy that. Like it's like kind of suddenly, you know, you're on the beach and just like laying down and enjoying the sun and everything, and there's nothing you have to do. There's nowhere you have to be, and it's just so nice. So for a long time, well, for quite a while, I was just in that kind of mindset of like I'm not doing anything I don't want to do in terms of training, and that's perfect. You know, that was good. And then little by little, I started like wanting to move a little bit, not necessarily parkour, but just physically moving. You know, because my body was kind of out of shape, and I could feel like the negative effects of being out of shape. Uh, so it made me motivated for the first time to go training and just enjoy. You know, so I was going out jogging and doing maybe a couple jumps here and there every now and again. And little by little, I got back into it, but with constantly this kind of rule of I'm not going to do something I don't want to do. Like I'm not going to go on a training session that I don't really want to go on, you know? um, Kind of like, you know, if you go, like if you're deciding to go out to see a movie or something, like you're not going to force yourself into it. Like if you don't want to go, you're just not going to go, right? So if you're there, it's because you want to be there. So that's how I felt with the training. And little by little, I got back into doing stuff and pushing myself a little more, like putting myself kind of under pressure in front of some jumps and things like this. And but again, never forcing myself to be there. Like at any point, if I was like, you know what, I don't want to train for a week, like nothing was forcing me, you know. And that was great. And because I was finally, since a long time, enjoying my sessions, as I said before, it was motivating me to get back the next day and train some more, you know. And yeah, that's how I got back, like reunited with training and starting pushing myself uh, in terms of progression and things like this, um, but without having that negative pressure like crushing me as before, you know. And finding that balance I'm talking about between that tension and that relaxation, that's when it started happening. um, but it took some time, and it took also some time to realize that actually this giving up phase that I had gone through was actually the best thing that ever happened to me. Like I needed that more than anything, and because it happened, then I could move on to the next thing, which is enjoy my training and finding this balance that I desperately needed, but I didn't even know I needed. um, and having this kind of like stepping back a little bit from myself and kind of having a better understanding of myself, how I function, how my motivation functions, and what training means, what training is supposed to be, and what it's supposed to bring into my life, you know. So all these things like became a lot clearer gradually. It started all making sense. Like it's like I had this experience in my mind that I only understood after, you know, like if something goes crazy in your mind, and only like a year after you kind of make sense of it, and you're like, oh, okay, so actually that was, I understand now, that was a good thing, you know. But when you're going through it, it's like what is happening to me? Like I've never been in that mindset before. Like is this wrong? Is this, it feels horrible, it feels pretty bad. Like you just can't make sense of it. So it's a weird phase. Like it's, you don't know if you're depressed or what's going on. Like, am I about to fall into a deep depression and not leave the house forever? And you know, like you just don't know. And it's only after some time that it started making sense gradually. And here I am now.
And what was it? Because you say training, but I don't complete. I can assume, but I'd like to know for for certain. You train alone a lot, like
Yeah.
almost exclusively. And when you were starting, it was also pretty much exclusively alone, or like between the beginning into the hit the wall, stop, gonna just watch movies and stay up
Yeah.
days. Do you have like what were these parts of your training like? Was it even as you explained it, like there was a lot of, I was gonna say anger. I mean, you did explain before when I met you about how you felt a lot of frustration. The frustration have different, was it a different type of frustration on each part? Like I think I'm just imagining a 15-year saga for you. And then within that 15-year saga, it's like first 5 year was like this, and then the next 5 year was like this, and then the next 5 year it had a different feeling to it. And also because it's pretty unusual, like with a lot of people that I do speak with, it's like usually there are other people around.
Yeah.
You, I know it was a lot of it was alone. So could you
Yeah.
talk a bit more of that?
Yeah. I spent a lot of time training alone, and I mean, I like to be on my own. I like to do things on my own. I'm very comfortable on my own. And I like to be in my thoughts and kind of explore my own thoughts in that way that you can only do when you're alone. Especially like when you're practicing something, like practicing it on your own means that you're kind of like you have this view of yourself more than when you're in a group, because then you're just part of that group, you're just this element of the group, and you're kind of following around what others are doing. When you're on your own, you're making decisions constantly, like deciding, okay, I'm going to practice this, or I'm going to look into this or look into that. You're not just showing up and then seeing what happens, or at least a lot less than when you're in a group. So I guess because I was on my own like this so much, I was constantly really uh, overthinking, I guess, what was going on, what I was doing, um, and because I was internalizing a lot, because I just couldn't share all the stuff. Like when I was in front of a jump that was putting me under pressure, I didn't have someone next to me that I could like vent uh, my pressure, my fear, or whatever it is that I was feeling. I had to just deal it on my own. I couldn't just share with someone and say, oh, you know what, this thing that like this, I'm afraid I'm gonna slip when I'm gonna land, or this branch is a little bit in the way. It's nice to have someone next to you just to just throw all this at them, and maybe hear what they have to say about it. Maybe they have some reassurance to give you about it, or things like this. But even if they don't, it's just nice to kind of like throw all this at them, because you're getting rid of it. And but when you're alone, you can't do that. You just keep it to yourself. And like I was creating this in my mind, like this other me that I was talking to, so I wasn't actually talking to him, but it was like I don't have anyone there physically, so I'm just gonna create someone there that I'm gonna like throw all this stuff at, and basically what, like over time when you do this, you're you start really overthinking everything, and you start like taking home with you all the stuff that happened during the session, because you couldn't share it at any point with anyone. So it's just there. These thoughts are just there in your mind. You're thinking about the jump you want to do, or the jump that you did, and you're wondering like, I did it once now, could I do it again? Or like that was a big issue very often for me, that I was doing a jump that was hard, like that had put me under pressure. And maybe I would even do it like 3 times or maybe 10 times. And then I'd get home and I'd be like, oh, okay, but can I do it again tomorrow? Like if I go back tomorrow, am I going to be under pressure again? How am I going to deal with it? Like today, maybe I was just lucky. Maybe I was just feeling good. And I would just stress myself out just because I was overthinking it, rather than just like, oh, okay, I had a good day. I did this new jump. Now I'm going to enjoy my evening at home and watch a movie and blah, blah, blah. No, it was just like constantly like coming back at me, like overthinking really everything. And so that over time accumulated and built that stress, like so yeah, part of the reason why I went through this whole mental journey was because I was training on my own, and the whole mental aspect of my training was completely central to my practice. I feel like technically, physically, I would be a much better practitioner if I had trained in a group all the time. Like my performance would be better, but I wouldn't have at all gone through all the things I went through in my mind um, if I had been in a group the whole time, and so now I don't really coach anymore, but when I do coach or when I did coach, like that whole mental approach to training is the core of my approach to coaching. I don't really care so much about the performance, the jumps, the technique. What I care is the whole mental process. How you deal with your fear, how you deal with the pressure, how you deal with the stress during a session, but also around the session, like in your life. This thing of taking home with you the stress of the session. Like all these questions are to me so much more interesting and beneficial than just the jumps themselves. The jumps are just an excuse to go through all that. They put you in those situations, so that's what they're for. But then the whole point of it is not the jump. The whole point is what's going on in your mind and how you're processing it and what you're learning from it. And that is completely central to my approach as a coach. I like to work with fear. I like to work with people's weaknesses, to try to search for those weaknesses. And then once I find them, like I want to poke them and like, force people to face them and work with them, which is sometimes very uncomfortable. It's always uncomfortable to work on your weaknesses, to be faced with your own weaknesses. But that's what we need the most. Like we're already strong with our strength, so we need to focus on the weak part. That's the most important stuff. So yeah, that affected completely my coaching and my approach as a human being in general, like the way I communicate with people, and when people are not doing well and we're having a talk and things like this, like all the things I'm gonna say to them or all the questions I'm gonna ask are completely related to this whole experience that I had through Parkour and through my training alone rather than in a group.
So what are your weaknesses now that you're working on?
In terms of physical exercise and training in general, I don't really feel like there's anything specific because I feel like I understand myself. I understand how my motivation works. I understand my own process. So I kind of figured all this stuff out, and now I'm really enjoying everything because I don't have to figure anything out like this anymore. So I mean, of course, I still have technical weaknesses on certain things, but I'm addressing them. I'm working on them. I'm like identifying them and not really shying away and not trying to look the other way and focus on things I'm good at and stuff like this. But like, there's no big thing I need to focus on and improve or anything. It's just little details, that I identify through my practice. In terms of of physical training, of sport and stuff like this, I wouldn't say there's any big major thing that I need to kind of figure out now. Feel like I'm past all that. That would be more in terms of my life in general, me as a human being and my interactions with other people and things like this, rather than just like confining it to just my training. You know, like I've sorted that part out. Now I can expand to things that I feel may be more meaningful than just the training.
Like what?
Hmm?
Like what?
I guess yeah, my relationships with others and um, like things that I value now as a human being. Like I'm constantly asking myself what I should focus on now. Like what matters really to me now. For a long time, it was just the training, and maybe now, like I don't know, trying to be there a bit more for my friends and things like this. Um, so yeah, I would like that's the kind of thing that's more in my mind now, rather than just the training stuff.
How's that working out for you?
I'm still identifying stuff, but I'm working on stuff, so um, I guess it's okay. I mean, overall, I'm quite enjoying my life and enjoying what I'm doing, and I kind of put myself in a position in my life where I'm where I want to be. Um, I've always wanted to have a certain amount of freedom. Like if I want to go to travel tomorrow for a couple months, I don't want to tell myself, oh, but you have your job that you cannot leave, or you have whatever, you know, these obligations that you need to fulfill. I don't want that. So I've made choices throughout my life that would take me away from that kind of obligation so that I would still have that freedom. So obviously I had to sacrifice maybe a certain standard of living or certain comfort or a certain security in terms of money and things like this and my job and stuff like that. But the payoff is that I have this freedom to like pursue whatever feels important right now. Like I started playing the guitar, for example, and if tomorrow I decide, okay, now I just want to do the guitar and nothing else, you know, then I can pretty much do that because of those choices that I made, those life choices that put me right here, right now, you know. So I'm quite happy with that. That after all these years of making those choices, I'm at the spot where I'm quite happy to be, and I can do the things that I want to do, even if I haven't identified all the things that I want to do. Like as things happen in life, and we like one day I was doing parkour, now I'm doing climbing. Maybe tomorrow I'm just playing the guitar. Maybe the day after or maybe in the 10 years I want to be a painter or whatever it is, you know, or maybe I want to travel for 5 years or something like this and not have a home or anything. I don't know, but things will happen, and when they happen, I want to be able to kind of roll with it rather than be like, oh no, I have my obligations and I cannot get away from those things, you know. So yeah, I'm quite happy with that.
The last time you spoke, there was a question I'm curious to know if you've answered yet. Um, you were getting comfortable. You were just saying about comforts at the moment.
Yeah.
And do you feel like you've been able to address that?
Yeah, I have this weird relationship with comfort. I know we had a lot of conversations about that.
Yeah, yeah.
Because, yeah, I mean, we kind of instinctively search for comfort all the time. But sometimes the lack of comfort is what we need the most. Like when you haven't had a certain comfort, then you learn to enjoy it when you do have it. And throughout my travels and my training and things like this, it's been one of the important aspects of those things, especially the travels. When I travel on a bicycle or things like this, I'm quite uh, minimalistic in my approach to it because I like not having stuff, so that when I do have stuff, then I can really enjoy these things, even if it's really simple things like just food or having a roof over my head, or um, so there's this relationship with comfort that I have, where like I'm trying not to have comfort all the time, so that I can really value it when it's there, and I don't take stuff for granted. And that if tomorrow all the comforts I have right now are taken away from me, then it's not going to be the end of the world for me. I'm just going to be like, oh, okay, well, I had them, it was nice, now I don't, and that's fine, and like I don't want to be affected too much by all these things that we have, all these comforts. And yeah, sorry, I can't remember, what was your question?
Well, yes, about comfort, but also about the comfort of being in one place and like, oh, it's like
Oh, yeah.
you have the fireman job, you're
Yeah.
in a comfortable situation,
Yeah.
and then you felt like there was something that was missing because of that.
Yeah. 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 Well, when you have comfort, usually it comes with a routine. Um, and the problem with the routine is that it kind of puts you asleep. You get used to it, and you stop questioning questioning it to some extent. Like it's easy to do the same thing that you did the day before, and that you also did the day before that, and so on, because you're kind of in a pattern and you just roll with it. It's easier to just roll with it rather than to just get out of it and do something different. And so I don't like to feel like I'm just stuck in that kind of routine, in that kind of everyday life and comfort and stuff like this. I don't want to feel like it's taken a hold of me and now I'm not even questioning it anymore. I'm just rolling with it, and time is flying by, and like I'm just kind of like on autopilot and just going through life like that.
Do you feel like that at the moment?
Sorry, what?
Do you feel like that now? Because this was like when I met you in 2018.
Yeah, that was before, but right now, because I'm so focused on climbing and making progress, I don't feel it at the moment, because I feel like I'm being productive in a way that I want to be productive. So I don't have that issue right now. That's why I'm pretty happy just being here in Fontainebleau and not really making any plans other than just going and climb. Um, but that might change. Maybe tomorrow I'm gonna get injured or whatever it is, and I'm gonna want to do something completely different. Maybe I'm gonna go on a trip for a year or something like this. But right now I don't feel that need, because as I said, I'm being productive in the way that I want to be. So I'm quite at peace with this whole thing right now. But yeah, last time I saw you, I wasn't so much. I was climbing, but I wasn't so focused on it, and it wasn't as central in my life as it is right now. So I felt like I wasn't really being productive. I wasn't bringing anything of value to my life, and I don't like that. I feel like I'm just being idle, and it's not a good feeling. Even if I was doing stuff, but when you're doing stuff that's not the stuff you really want to be doing, then you might as well not do anything.
Well,
So
there's a different quality now to how you're approaching climbing, which is why there's so much more fulfillment from it.
yeah. Yeah, and I have the approach, I have the manner to that I use to train. I figured that out, but I also have the fulfillment from the climbing. So it's not just about having the right approach; it's also what are you getting out of it. So like for example, right now I could maybe focus like put all that experience that I have, I could put it on learning a new skill. But that doesn't mean that that new skill would make me happier. That doesn't mean I would be enjoying it. Like, you need to have also the enjoyment of what you're doing. And right now I'm having it with the climbing, but I wasn't so much, like, it wasn't so present last time I saw you, like 2 years back. So I was enjoying the climbing, but it wasn't really like this thing that I was like thinking about when I was getting up in the morning and and looking forward to, or anything like this. It was just this enjoyable thing that I was doing every now and again, but that was
What
it.
changed?
What?
What changed?
Um, I I climbed my first like hard thing, the thing that I considered to be hard. Like, in climbing there's grades, and they're different everywhere. But in France, like, you have 6A, 6B, 6C, then 7A, 7B, 7C, and so on. And I've climbed my first 7A, which in my mind was like, it's serious climbing. Like, you're not like, it's not the level of a pro, but it's not the level of a beginner either. It's kind of like when you in Fontainebleau you climb 7A, then you're a decent climber. And it was like, for me, it was like this moment of, oh, okay, so like I can climb something that I consider to be hard. So I don't know, that was like little motivation. Like, oh, okay, so I'm not just this average little climber. Maybe I can like get better at this. And it was, yeah, it was a little motivation. I mean, my motivation is not necessarily to be the best or to compare myself to others, but it's good when you can feel you're making progress in something, and when you feel that you're competent at something, it's good motivation. And that's what that did for me. It was like this little realization that, oh, okay, so actually I could get better at this. And also I climb barefoot, which is not that common. I mean, some people do, and one of the best climbers in Fontainebleau, if not the best, is a barefoot climber. And he's very, very strong, very good.
What's his name?
Charles Albert.
Okay.
He's incredible. One of the best boulders in the world, basically. Like, if you're one of the best in Fontainebleau, you're one of the best in the world. And I've met him a couple times. Actually, he's into parkour, so it was funny. We had a parkour session. Yeah.
Two barefoot climbers, which is not common, as you said. So I was just maybe you guys train together too. I don't know.
Yeah, we don't climb because his level is so much better than mine that like it would make no sense. Okay. But we get along, and he's a cool guy. He's quite a funny character, and but an interesting person. Yeah, he kind of lives in the forest. He sleeps in caves and stuff like this, and he's very interesting.
You picked up parkour?
What?
And he's interested in parkour?
Yeah. We met in the forest, and he was like, "Oh, are you the guy who does parkour?" And I was like, "Yeah, you're the guy who climbs barefoot." And we just got along, and I see him every now and again, and we just do some jumps together or have a chat, and like, pretty cool. So what I was saying is that like, barefoot climbing is not that common in general, and in Fontainebleau as well. And I felt like, okay, I can climb something kind of hard and be barefoot. So I want to see how far I can take this barefoot thing. Like, I know it can be done because this guy who's really strong climbs barefoot, and he's one of the best. So it can definitely be done. But I want to see for myself. Like, I want to explore this little thing that's not really well known. Like, it's this still kind of unexplored territory, the barefoot climbing. And it reminded me a little bit of parkour when I got into it. It was still this new thing that very few people knew about. So it was kind of being part of this secret society, kind of, like all the common people didn't really know what it was. Like if you talked about parkour, no one knew what it meant. And they, when they saw you jump, they just couldn't understand, like, what is this? What are these people doing? Are they committing suicide? What is this? They didn't understand. And I enjoyed being part of this little group, this little like secret group that no one really understands or knows about. And I get this a little bit with the barefoot climbing as well. Even if, I mean, there's nothing secretive about it, and like there's nothing to figure out, from the people outside, like they just see me climbing barefoot. Oh, he's a barefoot climber, it's no big deal. But for me, it's like I'm exploring this little territory that's not really well explored, that's not really well known, and I kind of like that. I like exploring things like this. So that's one of the added motivations as well.
Does it make you excited to meet someone that climbs barefoot then?
Yeah. But like meeting that guy, definitely, because he's really good, and he's like he's doing something that most people would have thought it was impossible, like to climb at his level and be barefoot. Like if he didn't exist, then people would be saying it's impossible, um, but I mean, otherwise, apart from him, I wouldn't be incredibly thrilled to meet another barefoot climber, because it depends like how they're climbing, what their approach is, and all that. It's not just the fact that they're barefoot, because there's a lot of things you can climb barefoot that are not harder than with shoes. It depends what you climb, but certain moves or certain techniques are really hard when you're barefoot, or certain specific climbs are really hard when you're barefoot. So I'm more interested into that, like exploring really the barefoot aspect, and the parts where it's harder to be barefoot rather than in shoes. That's what's really interesting to me. It's not just being barefoot in general.
Very niche.
Yeah, absolutely.
All of it is very niche. My gosh. I had so many other questions as you were talking, but I'm just to change it up because I'm curious about your magic now.
Yeah.
Have you put that aside, or has that just been?
I haven't put it aside, but I'm doing less at the moment. But it's always like this with the magic. I'll be really focused on it for a few weeks or a few months, and then I'll just do something else and then get back to it. But it's one of those skills, like when you have it, you can just do it. And it's like kind of playing an instrument or something. Like you train hard, but once you have it down, then it's fine. Like even if you kind of lose your edge a little bit, there's still so much you can do. So like I can still take a pack of cards or a coin or something and do a few quick tricks, and it's cool. It's like this nice little skill that I have. And sometimes if I feel like pushing myself a bit more, then I'm gonna train it for a while, or if I get inspired by something. But otherwise, it's yeah, just practice it every now and again, and that's cool.
It sounds like you're married to the process, whatever it is.
Yeah, to this like being spontaneous with what I want to do, like not telling myself, oh, I made the decision to do this, therefore I'm gonna do this, like no, if maybe that decision was right at the moment I made it, and I lived it out. Maybe I didn't live it out the way I thought I would. Maybe I took another path, but now I feel like, okay, I want to focus on something else, and I want to be capable of making that decision, of like, okay, now I'm putting this aside and I'm gonna focus on this new thing. Like I was saying with the magic, with like sometimes for a few months I'm gonna be completely obsessed with it and learning a new trick or something. But when I feel like, okay, I've had enough for now, I want to be completely ready and able to kind of put it aside and do whatever else is motivating me at that moment, um, so again, it's I guess it's a kind of balance between what I was saying before with the discipline and that tension, like if you don't have discipline, you're not going to be able to accomplish anything. Because sometimes things are hard. Sometimes you feel like you're not making any breakthroughs, or that doesn't mean you should stop. That doesn't mean there's a lack of motivation. It just means you're hitting an obstacle and you have to find a way to overcome it. And that's completely different to not having motivation to do something. So making the difference between those two things is really important. Um, and sometimes because things are hard, we kind of want to convince ourselves that, oh, maybe this, I'm not interested in this anymore and I'm just going to do something else, like as an excuse, kind of like we do with jumps sometimes, like, oh, but it's a bit dark, or it's a bit wet, or I'm a bit sleepy or tired, or I trained yesterday or whatever. Like, we're all masters at finding excuses not to do stuff. um, but if you have that honesty with yourself, um, then you're good, because then when whatever excuse you're coming up with is genuine, when it's the real reason why you shouldn't do it, then you can embrace it and you don't feel bad about it. But if it's just a silly excuse because you're kind of scared, and then you should be able to call bullshit on your own self, and to be like, okay, I'm just finding excuses here. I'm gonna sort this out. Like, I'm gonna focus on this, and I'm gonna do what I have to do. So yeah, there's a big difference between not being motivated and just finding something hard, and feeling like you're stuck. And it's very important to make that distinction.
I'm actually having trouble with that at the moment.
Yeah.
We're talking about the concussion symptoms I have.
Yeah.
Guess it's been like 5 years now of this pattern of I have to stop because I don't want to aggravate the symptoms anymore. But there's also attention paid of, is it actually the symptoms or not? And it's a very faint understanding of if I'm stopping because of the symptoms, or if it's because I'm lazy.
Yeah.
And it's tricky because it's a very fine line.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
But only you can know the answer. Like, you can be really good at convincing others of whatever you want, and you can be just as good to convince your own self, and to kind of believe your own lie. So it's all about, like, not being afraid to be honest with yourself, and that's how you become productive. That's how you work through things, rather than just kind of being delusional. But it's hard, for sure. It's really, really hard, especially because, as you said, this is a really fine line sometimes. So it's hard to make the distinction, and sometimes we make bad decisions. Like, sometimes we're just lazy, and um, but um, but it's good to at least try, to at least question yourself and try to make that good decision. Like, if you're trying that, then you're doing a lot more than what most people do. So that's already pretty good.
I do have to say though, always it's always there. It's always clear when you are deciding to go this way, or if you're deciding to go that way. I find for myself, it's rarely decided because I'm not certain.
Yeah.
Again, it's such a fine line, but maybe it's because it's like after the fact that I made the decision, I look back and see like, oh, I made the decision actually because I'm lazy, not because of the symptoms. But then there's the convincing of like, well, the results would have been pretty bad if you didn't err on the side of caution. And so there's a pattern within the pattern.
Yeah.
And I'm struggling with that at the moment. I'm not certain sometimes where that is. And it's like I'm trying to be honest, but maybe, I don't know, maybe it's having to take another perspective entirely because of this pattern that's already been there for so long.
Yeah.
The wall that you were talking about, like I've been banging against it for so long that maybe, I don't know about just giving up and not doing anything, but have you come across a situation where you're like, this is done so much and how do I take another perspective on it, because it's just so convoluted, because you only, like with something that's physical, like a head injury for me,
Yeah.
no one, like I've seen so many specialists and no one really knows aside from me. Like no one could have told me that this might be the answer to my symptoms.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. It's like, for me, I would say that um, this is one of the occasions when it's more about letting go than trying more, than trying harder. So it's about like taking that step back and breathing out and just trying to see things from a new perspective, like to not hold on to the way you were seeing things, and to not try to uh, tell yourself, oh, but I should be feeling like this, or I should, whatever, like to not be judgmental about your own self, but rather to kind of let go of all this and try to take that step back and see the situation from a new light, like as if you were just this observer looking at the whole situation, like this observer who has no connection to the situation, um, that's how I would see it. Like if things like this happen for me, like when I'm working on something, or when I'm trying to improve on a certain thing, and I don't know if I'm trying hard enough, or if I'm lying to myself or whatever, or if I'm trying to avoid something because I'm scared or whatever. Like that's for me is a moment for that relaxation. I need to kind of chill. I need to stop questioning. I need to stop trying whatever I'm trying. Take a step back and try to see the situation differently, and uh, it's hard to do because uh, we're all in our own heads. We all have our own mechanisms at play, and only you can know how to understand you, and only I can understand I. So I can't like give you a recipe for it, I guess, but but that's my approach. Like when I start to feel this tension building up because I just can't understand something, or I can't understand something about myself, and that's, to me, that's a sign that I have to kind of let go, as opposed to try harder. I don't know if that makes sense.
it does. When you said that there needs to be like another, it's like your invisible friend when you were starting parkour, maybe.
Yeah.
The other Toma that you would be speaking to.
Yeah.
But I'll ask a question about that later. Um, do you ever feel like, I came across this recently with my parkour training because of, well, I've been doing some other internal work as well that's allowed me to see myself in a, it's like the having the Mandy, but that's not the best analogy for it. I think that a better analogy to explain it is, the Bruce Lee quote, um, I don't punch, it punches.
Yeah.
Of course you would. I'm just recalling the time that I almost jumped on your Bruce Lee shirt. Um, so this it punches. I feel like I have access to it jumps now. Like,
Yeah.
it's a very big difference of just
Yeah.
jumping at a jump, and I'm going to jump to it versus, all right, I'm going to let go and I'm going to let it jump.
Yeah.
It's very different. So I'm assuming I haven't been able to connect it to having it assess the situation of like, is it right or is it wrong that I make this decision? But is it that thing that helps you decide on these nuanced situations?
Yeah, it's like what you're describing is basically you don't want to be hindering yourself. You don't want to get in the way of your own self, like to make things happen.
Yeah.
So to make things happen, you need to put in some effort. You need to put in some discipline, some training, and yeah, you need to put some effort into it. But at the same time, if you're trying too hard, then you're kind of blocking yourself. You're not letting things happen the way they should be because you're just overdoing it basically. So it's finding that middle ground where, again, I'm going to talk about that tension and relaxation, that middle ground in between those two things where things just happen. There's not too much of one or too much of the other. It's just the perfect mix, and that's when it happens. So, sorry, what was your question about this?
No, it's
I
fine.
just go.
No, the tension and relaxation makes sense to my question.
Yeah.
I think we can end that there,
Okay.
unless there's more insights or anything else you would like to say.
I mean, there's always more. Like we could talk for 10 hours and it's not more.
Yeah, we
We have
usually
had lots of really interesting conversations about loads of things.
yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, yeah, there's nothing specific right now that comes to mind. Like these questions are really interesting, and there's things I really enjoy talking about because they've obsessed me for a long time, and I still think about all these things a lot. Like trying to figure yourself out, I guess, is one of the most important things you can do in life. Because everything stems from that. Your relationships with others stem from that. Your place in the world stems from that. Your effect on the world and on people comes from that as well. So like it's paramount to understand yourself in that way, to understand how you're functioning, and to not resist how you're functioning, but at the same time um, to not force yourself in a certain direction. um, like we often think, well, if I don't like something about myself, I'm going to change it. Well, yeah and no. Sometimes like you're you and you're not going to change who you are really. You can change things about you a little bit, but you have to find that right balance between accepting who you are and working towards a direction that you want to take with your life. um, and again, it's a question of balance. um, I don't even know what I'm why I'm getting into that, but yeah, these questions I think are important, and I think we should be asking ourselves these things all the time, and that's what I'm doing, and I know that's what you're doing as well. You're thinking a lot about all these things. That's why we're having this conversation right now. So yeah, it's enjoyable, and I'm happy to talk about all that.
Cool. Accepting who you are, but also always inquiring who you are.
Yeah, yeah, it's kind of a balance. Because if you're just constantly telling yourself like I'm doing things that I don't want to be doing, and that's just who I am, like that's not what I'm advocating. That's not what I mean by accepting who you are. Um, like I mean, accept your nature, accept your flaws, accept that you have flaws, and like with those flaws come some qualities as well. And if you have certain qualities, then you need to accept the flaws that go with them. So it's acceptance in that sense. um, while at the same time working on being a better person, like working on reaching your goals and going in the direction you want to be going, which sounds like two completely contradictory things, but they're actually not. They work together. But it takes a lot of effort and a lot of time and a lot of self exploration to kind of understand where that balance lies in between those things. Um, like all the stuff we have talked about, I've talked a lot about tension and relaxation and things that are two extremes working together, like in general. That's how I see most of my life and most of the things I do. It's finding a balance. So it's not just acquiring something or building something up continuously. It's more a question of balance, and that's what I think life is about. Like the more I go through life, the more that's how I see things. That's how I see the fact that we're getting older and we're not always going to be as competent as we are now with certain things, but that doesn't matter because we can still find that balance within us. Like for example, with training, maybe you won't be able to do the same things you're doing now in 30 years. That doesn't mean you're not going to enjoy going out and doing stuff, so if you find this balance within you that I'm talking about, and that's really hard to define, but if you understand this concept of balance, then I think you're on a good path to make your life better, more fulfilling, and less conflictual with its own self, basically, because there's nothing more dangerous or more harming to your own self than to say, I have to be like this, or I have to be like that, or I must not be like this, I must not be like that. It doesn't work like that. You have to accept that if you don't want to be like this, then you're also not going to be like all these positive things that you take for granted. They're linked to this bad thing, So it's about, again, finding that balance between those two, this good thing and this bad thing, and kind of letting them work together, in the direction that is fulfilling for you. So yeah, it's all about balance. Basically, that's the way I see it.
The tension and relaxation. I was actually going to ask you a question of what if you were to recreate it artificially, is this a good way to go about it? And then I as you were talking, it answered itself. The way I see this tension and relaxation, it's actually, I find a better description of it is a peace of mind. Because when you have peace of mind, this tension and relaxation will naturally come.
Yeah, I would say that the peace of mind is the result of that balance between that tension and that relaxation. Like, it's what happens when you've figured that part out. That's the peace of mind. The peace of mind is not just being in one spot. It's being in a balanced spot between those two extremes, That's the way I see it.
So then I pose my question again then. So would it make sense not make sense, but would it benefit to almost artificially create this relaxation and tension to whatever activity you might do? And I'm going to give an example because for like strength training, like Soviet strength training, like there's so much research out there based on empirical evidence of these Soviet weightlifters, and they have it down to a science of, we do 100 reps for this exercise because that's what's been shown to be the most effective to reach this goal.
Yeah.
So there's the tension of the actual work, and then everything else, it's like 5-minute rest at least in between. So that's an example of where it's artificially created, because you might have a coach that's telling you to do that. But
Yeah.
so my question is, do you think creating tension and relaxation is the way to go with whatever endeavor that you want to implement it in, or how does it come about?
I think it's not just important that both of these aspects are there. It's important that you make the mix yourself, you know. So for that you need to understand where you're at with those two concepts, you know. um, it's not just like I have tension, I have relaxation, and then the magic's gonna happen on its own. Like you have to make it happen. You're the one who's finding the balance between those two things, you know. um,
We're the,
so what?
we are the alchemists in this situation.
Exactly, you're the one making it happen. And that's why it's an important lesson, because then when you understand this concept, you apply it to everything or anything in your life, because it's always the same pattern going on in everything you do. Like you can do too much or not enough of it, but you have to find the right balance that is right for you. And it might not always be the same, in the same spot. Like as I was saying, maybe in 10 years I'm not going to train the way I'm training now, so that balance is not going to be the same that it is for me right now today, you know. Like it changes constantly, so you're the only one who can know where it should be, right? So that's why no one can kind of do it for you. Like people can tell you how to train and stuff, that doesn't mean that they know exactly what you need in your life, you know. So yeah, you have to be the one asking the questions, and you have to be the one kind of searching for those answers. Otherwise you're just not going in the direction that you want to be going in. You're just maybe following someone else's idea of what your direction should be.
I agree entirely. So let's stop on that note, because we can
Yep.
go on and on and on about
Oh yeah.
as we usually do.
Yeah.
So I'm going to stop the recording now.
Okay.
Thanks for doing this, Toma.
No, you're welcome. Thank you.
All righty.